All right, let's rock and roll and get ready for week 4 by answering your start sit questions and go over a few DFS takes as well. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Super Flexology Start Sit series. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. Tonight, we have a full house. The band is back together. I am joined by Mitch Sorensen. That's at DinoMC on Twitter. What's going on, Mitch?
What's up, man? Ready to do this.
And then we have Dan Lamagna, and that's at LC_Dean on Twitter.
Good looking, John. Good to hear from you tonight.
Always a pleasure, Dan. And then back from his short hiatus, his triumphant return, and he's definitely going to gloat about his takes from last week. Jordan Lindsay at Jailbreak Screen on Twitter. What's going on, Jordan? Good to have you back.
Dude, I'm so happy to be back. I tell you what, man, it killed me last week to just hear you spit out all my good takes without all my context. I mean, I was hot, and there was just, you didn't hear the process behind it, and that hurt me inside. But you know what? I'm happy I gave out really good advice. Sorry I couldn't make it, but let's do this thing. We're hot. Let's keep this thing rolling, baby.
We are absolutely going to keep it rolling. So as we've done in the past, we're going to go over a really quick recap. Now, just to kind of shorten this part, like I said, we're going to keep it short here. Last week, we went 2-2-1. Yes, we did have a split on one of the questions, and our consensus takes missed on Frank Gore versus Tony Pollard. Even though it was very close, Jordan, you were the only one that hit on Tony Pollard. And then the 4-quarterback question, and I tried to tell you guys, I really did, but it was between Minshew, Cousins, Brissett, Bridgewater. You three guys went with Cousins. I went with Brissett. So I'm going to take my victory lap there. But I will tell you the standings for the season, 3 weeks in the books. Mitch, you have 9. Dan, you have 9. Jordan, you have 9. I right now have 8. But again,
let's go.
Yeah. Get your victory laps in now, guys, because that's going to change after this week. I don't want to waste another second, so we're going to jump right into the start sit questions. And Jordan, since you weren't on last week, I want the listeners to have a chance to hear your wonderful voice. So the first question, PPR, Chris Godwin at the Los Angeles Rams or Tyler Boyd at Pittsburgh on Monday night. Who are you going with?
Man, this one's a slam dunk, and this hurts me inside, but it's easily Boyd for me. Rams pass D has been insane. LA has the 7th fewest average points allowed on defense. Jameis has been inconsistent at best. It is a high over-under, so I could see a chance where, this could be the game where Evans and Godwin could be relevant, but we haven't seen it yet, so we can't really bank on that. But, there's still no definitive RB play for the Bucs, so that could lead to an increase in passing attempts. But Boyd, man, Pittsburgh getting absolutely demolished through the air. Joe Mixon has not been good at all. He's in the bottom 5 in yards per carry. Cincinnati has been slinging the ball through the air. Andy Dalton is throwing the ball like crazy. He's still the number 1 target in the offense. It's got to be Tyler Boyd.
All right, Mitch, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I'm not playing Godwin against the Rams. Like Jordan brought up, Cincinnati has a 73% pass to run ratio. And so Boyd's just going to get more targets. So I'm definitely going to go with Boyd.
All right, Dan, are you going to make it consistent here? Every week we've been unanimous for the first question. Who are you taking here, Boyd or Godwin?
That sounded like you're alluding that you're going with the train here, John. But, as I hear this, I wouldn't say it's a slam dunk. 2 studs here, though, this listener has. And I think this listener's got to go with their gut. I'm on the Godwin train normally because I have him in Scott Fishbowl. But some good points. Rams defense, I think it's a much stingier defense than the Steelers. Both teams are projected to score about 20 points. So I think they're in that kind of same range. That's why I don't think it's a slam dunk. But I'm going to give the edge to Monday Night Football versus your Steelers defense, Bauer. And I once had a teammate that said big players make big plays in big-time games. In the battle of 0-3 teams playing for pride, I think Boyd shows out on Monday night.
Well, and yes, you're correct in the fact that I alluded to my answer. I showed my hand a little bit early, but I'm also going Tyler Boyd. And this is going to be now, 4 weeks in a row I'm picking on my Pittsburgh Steelers defense. They can't stop anybody. And I know the addition of Minkah Fitzpatrick, it might have helped in the sense that the 49ers last week, they didn't do a lot in the air, but that defense still can't stop anybody. And I think they're going to do their best to slow down Mixon. And even though it might not take much right now, just because we haven't really seen a lot from him this season. And then one other reason why I'm not going with Godwin, 2 of the 3 games, he's run a majority of his routes out of the slot. We said it last week. That Rams defense is very stingy against slot receivers. As a result, if we see him in the slot a majority of this game, I think they're going to shut him down. This is more of an Evans game. And yes, he still plays, but it could be OJ Howard as well, even though we haven't really seen him much. But for me, this is a fairly easy one. I'm going Tyler Boyd. So again, this is 4 weeks in a row now, guys. We've had a 4-0 sweep on the first question. So Tyler Boyd over Chris Godwin. So let's move on here. Next one up. And we're going to stick with the same game for the one player. And Dan, we're going to start with you. John Ross at Pittsburgh on Monday night. And this is going to be PPR or Philip Dorsett at Buffalo. What do you think?
Here's another one where the listener has two receivers that I think are similarly close. Both have very low floors. I mean, they could disappear, but they also could both blow up. Although the Patriots have a little more projected total with 24.75 points, I see the higher ceiling versus Pittsburgh ceiling for John Ross. Dorsett, I also think, depending on Julian Edelman, whether he plays or not Edelman, that could factor in how valuable Dorsett is. But for my pick, I'm going to stay with the prime time game, Monday Night Football. Give me John Ross.
Yeah, you mentioned Julian Edelman, and I know that he had the chest injury over this past weekend. It sounds like he's back at practice today, so I think he's trending in the right direction. But if he... Well, I won't get into it yet, but I'll let you guys have the floor first. Mitch, what are your thoughts here? John Ross, Philip Dorsett.
Yeah, I really don't play outside wide receivers against that Buffalo defense because it's so good. And Ross has the ability to get one pass, go 80 yards, and get you a touchdown, get you 14 points just like that. And he's already averaging 9 targets a game. So I'm going to go with Ross as well.
Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, my notes for Ross literally just say, see Tyler Boyd. And, that Buffalo D, it's good. They got Trey White, they got Levi Wallace. They are legit. They are playing at home as well. Analytically speaking, they do have that home field advantage. It is Bills Mafia. I can see this game being like a 19-12, 19. This is going to be a low scoring game. Give me John Ross. He had his bust week last week. I think he's still going to give us, like you said, 9 targets a game. Easy. Give me John Ross. Dorsett had a blow-up game last week. Similar players, like Dan said, the low floor, but also the incredibly high ceiling. If we're going to roll the dice, give me John Ross.
All right. Well, guys, this is going to be 2 in a row. And based on these answers, hell, maybe Andy Dalton is a great play as well. But I'm also going John Ross on Monday night against my Pittsburgh Steelers. Dan, you said it 2 weeks ago. I think you thought that Mitch was taking a peek at your notes. I feel similarly with you guys as of now through 2 questions here. The Bills, they're a top 10 defense in terms of passing yards against, very few passing touchdowns against, and one of the top terms of interceptions. It's a tough divisional matchup early in the season. Jordan, you said it could be 19-12. I think that is a really reasonable prediction here. It's going to be a low scoring game, and it's going to be a grinded out type of game. I don't love Josh Allen in this game either, but in this situation, I'm also going John Ross. So it doesn't seem like through the first 2 questions, any of us are going to pick up any ground on each other. But again, another 4-0 sweep. Next question, Mitch, we're going to start with you. And this is an interesting one because it's 2 running backs that have struggled so far in the season for one reason or another. PPR, are you going Aaron Jones against Philadelphia on Thursday night or David Montgomery against Minnesota?
I think the real question is, when are we going to stop trying to make David Montgomery a play against, an RB2? Because Aaron Jones is a mid-tier RB2 every week, and you don't have to really worry about it. You can just put him in, and you're probably going to be okay. But David Montgomery is, at best, an RB3 every week who doesn't provide you a ceiling at all. And Aaron Jones at least provides you a ceiling. So even though Aaron Jones is only getting 52% of the snaps, give me Aaron Jones just because it gives me that chance to have a 25-point week when I don't think the chance of David Montgomery having that same week is very, very slim, especially going against the Vikings this week.
I'm actually really surprised by that answer from you, but we'll get back to that in a second. Jordan, what are your thoughts here? Aaron Jones, David Montgomery, full PPR.
I just want to say I feel personally attacked by Mitch right now, just for my Damian Williams takes.
I was gonna say, why is that?
Just for my Damian Williams takes. Now he's going after my guy Montgomery. I'm gonna completely disagree with Mitch here and hopefully gain a lead. David Montgomery is gaining the trust. He's getting it. We're talking about week 3, week 4 right now. David Montgomery is slowly but surely getting more and more reps, more and more snaps, more and more targets, more and more carries. He's showing the trust. He's breaking tackles. He's doing what he was drafted to do. Philadelphia is the 3rd best rushing defense. Jamal Williams is actually gaining snaps. That's a problem for Aaron Jones because Jamal Williams isn't that great. But guess what? Matt LaFleur seems to like him. Not good for Aaron Jones. So that's where I'm at. Give me Montgomery. Nothing against Mitch, but that's where I'm going.
All right. Finally, we made it a little interesting. Dan, break this temporary tie. David Montgomery, Aaron Jones. What do you think?
I think we've definitely found the battle that's going to separate us this week. And similar to the first one, this listener, I think, has to go with their gut here a little bit because they're in very similar situations. I mean, both of the guys are sort of in three-headed monsters, primarily two. I mean, you have Montgomery and Cohen and Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. For a little while, I was ready to flip a coin here. I was concerned about Aaron Jones' shoulder, but I see he's a full participant in practice, so that's a good sign for him. And to me, the differentiator here is I'm going to go with Vegas. And I think there just might be one or two more red zone opportunities for Aaron Jones. They're projected to score, 25 versus 20 points. When you look at Green Bay versus the Bears, it's a primetime Thursday night game. The Packers are going to be amped up. I think the Vikings defense is a little better than the Eagles. So I think there's just enough to edge Aaron Jones, and that's going to be my selection.
This was a tricky one for me, and I'm going to be honest. There were a few questions, this one, and then a few coming up later on the show, that I actually would love to see the other options available. But since we're stuck with these two choices, I look at Aaron Jones against Philadelphia on Thursday night, and this is another situation where we're going to have to let the listener know in advance what our take is. And unfortunately, it's not really going to help out because we're getting another split, guys. And you look at Aaron Jones against Philadelphia. They've given up 171 rushing yards in 3 games. Only 1 touchdown from the ground here for the Eagles defense. And recently, the Packers came out and they said, we want to see more of a split between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. And then this week, Aaron Rodgers came out and said, Devontae Adams and Jimmy Graham need to see more targets. That's going to keep me away. And I know we can't always listen to coach speak or what the quarterback saying throughout the week, but we've seen countless times Aaron Rodgers kind of take over. And if he's saying these guys need to get more targets, I think they do throw a little bit more against Philadelphia, who's been a little more susceptible against the pass than the run. And I don't love David Montgomery against Minnesota. So don't think that I'm going, I'm all out on Montgomery here. But between these two, I think he's just the lesser of two evils. Jordan, like you said, he's getting used a little bit more, but the Chicago coaching staff, they still have to get their head out of their asses, I think, and use him more than they are. But again, I'm going David Montgomery over Aaron Jones, slight edge, but I still don't love either of these two guys. Before we move on, anybody else have anything to add on these two since we have the 2-2 split?
I think John makes a good point. I would like to see what the options are. None of these running backs really excite me going into this weekend's game. I'm just more concerned about the Vikings and that Bears game. I think John also made a good point with, why doesn't Montgomery get the ball more? The last time I watched him, he looks like a talented back that needs more carries, right? And he's not getting them. So I just think that Packers Eagles have some sneaky scoring potential. I think Jones falls into the end zone one more time.
I don't want to say this just because it's just so cliche and just so taboo. But you got to realize that David Montgomery is a rookie. Alvin Kamara didn't take off till week 6. I'm obviously not saying David Montgomery is the next Alvin Kamara. That's ridiculous. That's what
I heard, Jordan. I heard it from your mouth right there.
No, I said I said Justice Hill. No, I'm just kidding. No, you got to understand. He's gaining reps. He's getting the trust. It's coming. It's not going to happen that quickly. I know Matt Nagy absolutely has to get his head out of his ass. He has been very unimpressive, play calling everything as far as personnel and everything goes. He has to use David Montgomery. He's clear cut been the best running back. It's not close. It's going to happen. You just have to trust the process.
Yeah, that whole team, it's been confusing up to this point. I mean, Mitch, before this week's game, you were messaging me and you said, I think Taylor Gabriel's a play here. And then you actually didn't play him in DFS, I don't think.
No, I played Miller instead. It was just one of those. Their names were right next to each other. I'm like, Anthony Miller is going to be the lower owned play, so I'm going to go with him. And should have just went with my gut.
It was 15 minutes before kickoff, and you tell me that and don't do it. But my point of that is you don't know what this team's going to do week in and week out. And I know that's a concern. Mitch, before we move on, do you have any last second take here on this?
Yeah, play Aaron Jones.
All right. Very persuasive. So 2-2 split. Unfortunately for that listener, not too much there to differentiate one over the other.
John, one last tiebreaker thought here is Mitch and I both went on the Aaron Jones train. On the season, Mitch and I are up 18-17 versus you and Jordan on our picks. So that might be the tiebreaker.
That's a very good point.
I'm still sticking with David Montgomery, but Dan, from group chats, Mitch does not like Aaron Jones. But yeah, if you guys want to use your 18 to 17 leverage in this situation, I'll let you have it. But moving forward, you're not going to have that leverage because you're going with Aaron Jones. Anyway, moving on. And Mitch, we're going to start with you on this one because it involves a wide receiver that seems to be somewhat polarizing. And you and I have had separate conversations about him, but it's full PPR. Adam Thielen against that tough Bears defense, or Robert Woods against maybe a slightly improved Tampa Bay defense. So what are your thoughts here, Mitch?
So this is just going to be a matchup for me. When you have the Rams at home, Goff is one of the highest scoring quarterbacks when he plays at home over all of 2018. And I think that's going to carry over to this year, especially because that running game just doesn't look good for the Rams right now. And we saw Danny Dimes light up that defense last week. Sorry, Jordan. With Thielen, you just have to hope that he gets the touchdowns now. They only throw 39% of the time. You just don't get the volume with them, and you have to pray for a touchdown. So give me Woods at home against that Tampa Bay defense.
Jordan, I'm going to throw it over to you now since this is another player that is involved in your Tampa Bay Buccaneers game this week. Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, who you taking?
I mean, I really wish I was offended by Mitch's statements, but he's absolutely right. I would not be surprised if we have 3 top 20 performances out of the Rams this week. That said, you're obviously giving me Woods here. And like Mitch said, I mean, it's the Bears D. I wouldn't be surprised if Kirk Cousins is on the ground most of the night. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a low-scoring game. Mitch Trubisky's bad. Cousins might be worse. Robert Woods has been slow to start the year, but I think the breakout's coming, especially, this defense gets torn apart over the middle. They don't get, the only person getting pressure on the quarterback, Shaq Barrett, and he's getting 4 sacks a game, I guess, somehow. That's insane, but he's the only one getting pressure. Robert Woods is getting free over the middle. That's what he does. It's going to be 3 wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 performances out of the Rams this week. Woods, slam dunk, another one for me.
All right. I'm taking it that you also love Jared Goff this week as well.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
All right. Dan, what do you think here? Adam Thielen against Chicago, Robert Woods against the Buccaneers.
I almost think we need to have a moment of silence for all the Adam Thielen owners out there, because this has got to be painful for them to listen to right now. With conviction, unlike our last 3, which we kind of had, some debate on. I think it's a slam dunk Robert Woods. It also seems like a consensus throughout the industry this week so far that I'm just hearing this could be his breakout week. He's the Rams receiver to not break out yet. It's maybe a buy low time on Robert Woods. Las Vegas has the Rams scoring 12 points more than the Vikings. So with conviction, I'm not going against any receiver versus the Bears, especially from Minnesota and that run-orientated team. Give me Robert Woods.
Yeah, I definitely think we have to pour one out for our homies that have Adam Thielen. And I actually have a few shares spread out through a few Dynasty leagues. And I saw a poll on Twitter today, and it was Adam Thielen, and this is Dynasty, Adam Thielen or Marquise Brown and Justice Hill. And the Marquise Brown and Justice Hill side actually was winning the poll. So that tells you a lot about what people see. Maybe Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, that what we've seen so far is a trend that's going to continue. And I certainly don't think it's going to change in week 4. I also have Robert Woods. That Tampa defense, they're not that bad on the ground. And they're only giving up 3 yards per rushing attempt. And I think that's going to continue. We haven't seen a lot from Todd Gurley up to this point in the season. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. I don't know if I see 3 top 20 performances from these Rams receivers, like Jordan said, but I do see Robert Woods outscoring Adam Thielen. Get your broom out because this is a clean sweep. This next one, it's actually a repeat, but the only reason I included it was a completely different person that posed the question. So let's run through this one fairly quickly. +4 for passing touchdowns, -2 for interceptions. Baker Mayfield at Baltimore or Marcus Mariota at Atlanta. Jordan, let's start with you. Between these 2 quarterbacks, who are you taking this week?
I said it the first week, never Mariota. No, I think this is one of those whiteboard, that corkboard material weeks for Baker. Everyone's talking, everyone's, doubting him. Last time he faced Baltimore's defense, week 17 last year, he threw for 376 yards and 3 touchdowns. That defense didn't get better. His offense got better. He's fired up this week. I'm never playing Mariota ever, so that's why I'm going with Baker.
All right, pretty simple. Dan, what are your thoughts here?
I'm glad you cleared up that it's a different person that has this decision this time, but I still feel like the four of us need to have an intervention with anybody who owns Mariota. If they have Mariota and Baker or whoever, I don't think Jordan should ever apologize for saying never Mariota. You know, we've had conversations in our dynasty leagues about Mariota, and we've kind of went back and forth throughout recent years. But, you know, if there was a year that it was make it or break it, and they sign all these receivers next to him through the draft, through free agency, what more do we need to see? I just don't believe he's a good quarterback. I think that pass game is very suspect. Going against a hard-hitting Atlanta defense that's better than a 1-2 team, I think in Atlanta, I think the Titans are in trouble. So give us Baker. You know, he's not playing to quite where we thought him and the Browns can, but he's still slinging the ball in the end zone. He's still going to score points. Baker by a landslide.
Mitch, are you going to change things up here, or are you going to go with Baker as well?
Well, I think that Atlanta secondary is actually pretty bad now since Keanu Neal went out with that torn ACL. And I think the Atlanta-Tennessee game is definitely going to be more high scoring than that Cleveland-Baltimore game where they're just going to run the ball. So give me the better quarterback, and I'll go with Mariota.
Whoa! You were waiting for that jab right there.
I was waiting. I was like, should I go with the first?
He has to complete the passes for the offense to work.
Mitch has been on Mayfield, and he has been looking for any opportunity. Have you
watched Mariota throw a football?
I watched Baker try to throw the football all day Monday night, and yeah, it didn't go very well.
I said if there was an over-under on pump fakes by Baker Mayfield in that game, he had to have hit the over.
He's been bad. He has been bad. He has been real bad. But like I said, I think it's the bulletin board week where Baker just unleashes that beast inside of him where he just silences everybody. Cowherd's going to just be gone next week.
So for me, this is another situation where it's kind of like I would like to see the other options. If this is a one quarterback league, there have to be other options available, but I'm assuming it's super flex. And this might be a situation this week. If I have a reliable skill position player, maybe I do go with one quarterback this week. I don't like Marcus Mariota at all. You know, week one, he kept us coming back for more. He gave us a little taste. He was quarterback 10 week one, and then he came back to earth the last 2 weeks, and he just hasn't looked good. Granted, Baker Mayfield hasn't looked good either, but teams cannot run against that Baltimore defense. They're only giving up about 60 rushing yards a game. And pace of play that Baltimore plays, we talk about Arizona and Baltimore's offense. They've been explosive so far, and they've been moving the ball, and they've been fast-paced games. I think Baker Mayfield's going to have to throw the ball against that team. I don't like either option here, but again, lesser of two evils situation. I'm taking Baker Mayfield. Mitch, you're hurting some people out there by saying Marcus Mariota is the better quarterback, but
you guys just want me to win. This one's free for me.
I honestly, this wouldn't shock me if this was like a Baker Mayfield puts up 10 points and Mariota puts up 8 or something. Again, I don't like either quarterback this week.
Can we clarify, Mitch, if you were to hit submit on Sunday and you had Mayfield and Mariota, you would put Mariota in your starting lineup?
I actually would, yeah.
Wow. Going to be interesting, boys.
It is going to be interesting.
That's
and now,
wild.
Not that I ever cheer for Marcus Mariota, but just so Mitch misses this question, I'm going to be cheering against him extra hard on Sunday. And it's funny because in my notes here, I said, can I say neither? You know, that's kind of how I felt. But there you go. 3-1 Baker Mayfield over Marcus Mariota. Listeners, if you're going to put Marcus Mariota in a question for us, I'm going to say 99% of the time, we're never going to vote for him. So just keep that in mind. This next one. So this is our last one, our last start-sit situation. And Dan, let's start with you. Full PPR again, Paris Campbell against Oakland, or one of Marcus Mariota's receivers, A.J. Brown at Atlanta.
I think I would have to be a hypocrite if I said A.J. Brown. As much as I like his talent and I'm hoping he kind of becomes good by the end of the season, as long as Mariota's there, I'm just not seeing it. It's an aggressive D that beat up the Philadelphia, receivers. I know Mitch made a good point with their safety being out, but I just can't see that production coming from the Titans. Paris Campbell, on the other hand, well-coached team. T.Y. Hilton's questionable. Campbell got more involved last week, and I think, he's playing the Oakland Raiders. So I see Campbell with a possible breakout performance here. Give me Paris.
All right, Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't want to contradict myself either. Mine actually comes down to if T.Y. Hilton plays or not. If T.Y. doesn't play, I'm going Paris, hands down. But if we're going to choose between the two and T.Y.'s playing, I'm going to go with what Mitch said. It's going to, Falcons are going to put up points. Titans are going to have to keep up. A.J. Brown's probably their best receiver. I mean, we saw a 100-yard performance week one. I know week one was a total fluke, almost all around the board. But if we're going off pure talent, this is like Paris Campbell versus AJ Brown is completely in a vacuum if TY's healthy. So I'm going to go AJ Brown unless TY doesn't play. Otherwise, Paris is a slam dunk.
You talk about AJ Brown being the best receiver on that team. For every drink that we pour out for our fallen comrades and the Adam Thielen owners, I think we have to pour out twice as many for the Corey Davis owners.
Yeah, I've never had a share of Corey Davis, and I'm very thankful.
Yeah, he's just, whether it's the opportunity, the quarterback throwing the ball, or something else in play, he hasn't looked great this season. So, Mitch, over to you. Paris Campbell, AJ Brown. What are you going with?
I agree with Jordan that if T.Y. Hilton is out, you play Campbell. But right now, Campbell only has 5 total targets on the year. AJ Brown is averaging 5 targets a game. So this one's pretty easy. Give me AJ Brown as long as there's not, T.Y. Hilton sitting out.
This is going to be a situation where I'm on the fence a little bit, and I kind of did it last week. If T.Y. Hilton is out, just like you guys said, without a doubt, I'm going Paris Campbell. If T.Y. Hilton plays, so this is something to keep an eye on, because as of now, they're saying it's a game time decision. While I want nothing to do with Marcus Mariota, and I know there's the whole thing about contradicting ourselves, I will take A.J. Brown. But again, I would prefer not to have these two guys as my option here. You have to assume it's a deeper league, right? So again, if T.Y. is out, Paris Campbell. If T.Y. plays, and you could tell as I'm going through this again, I don't know if you guys remember, but last week when it was Frank Gore, Tony Pollard, I did the same exact thing, and it's happening again. Yeah, Paris Campbell, if T.Y.'s out. If T.Y.'s in, oh boy, give me A.J. Brown, and I hate saying that. Before we move on to the DFS stuff, any other takes here? Any other thoughts, guys?
I was just, I think I could speak on behalf of Jordan and I think we expect a little more conviction from the Superflexology gents. None of this wishy-washy. If Hilton plays, who do you like, boys?
Fine, A.J. Brown. Doesn't matter if Hilton plays. How about that?
So now Mitch does have some conviction with these Titans here. So here's my last point. I think at the end of this season, John, I believe you said the rules were whoever loses this, the fans get to pick something that they get to do. Like, I think Mitch should have to get a Mariota shirt and, be on Twitter or something, pumping Mariota, because I think he falls this week with all these Titans picks.
Yeah, I think that would be a good punishment. I mean, we might have to think
like that.
We might have to think of something better because it's pretty much a lock that Mitch will finish in last. I kid, of course. Of course, a long way until the end of the season. But yeah, we'll figure something out. And I like the idea of involving something with a player that we, particularly don't like. But we'll definitely think about that more as the season progresses. The DFS stuff now. Week 3. Really quick recap. Our fades over $6,000. They were really solid last week. Of course, I had to throw 2 guys in there, and that's the only one that we really missed on. But James Conner, Austin Eckler, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, none of them over 3 times the return. Christian McCaffrey, I'm never voting against him again. So lesson learned last week. Finishing up with our recap of last week, the under 6,000 plays. This one was a little rough, but you know what? Everybody's going to go through the rough patches. We had Larry Fitzgerald, Marlon Mack, Mark Ingram, Mecole Hardman, Emmanuel Sanders, Royce Freeman. Jordan, with your right-in Mecole Hardman pick, another fantastic game by him. And Dan, I'm going to give you a second here. Take the floor with a 6.75 times return on the investment. Mark Ingram, 38.5 DraftKings points last week.
Yeah, I said last week he's just not getting the respect, and I just saw that game becoming a shootout and him being a focal point of the offense. At no point have I been on the Justice Hill bandwagon at this point. The Ravens just paid him too much money, Mark Ingram, to be a part of their offense. So I was stoked with that, had him in some DFS lineups. My advice for the listeners is just have conviction in your picks. I'm busting you guys. I wish I had more conviction in Ingram because I was tinkering my lineups just a little bit too much on Sunday. So don't tinker, but pumped with that Mark Ingram play, and hopefully I can match it this week.
That was a fantastic play and a huge return. And now looking at the plays under 4,000, Mitch, you didn't really have one because yours was contingent on LaShawn McCoy not playing. So you said Darwin Thompson, but that's kind of scratched because LaShawn McCoy did play. James Washington, he might as well be, down there in the third string now with Dante Moncrief. Jordan Miles Sanders, and then I had Nelson Aguilar. So 2 out of the 3, we had a solid hit. But Nelson Aguilar, he was my lock last week, a little over 6.5 times the return on the investment. So I was very happy with that one. Over $6,000 fades for week 4. Mitch, let's start with you. Who's the guy that you're not going to have anywhere near your lineup in week 4?
So I'm actually going to go off what Dan did week 1. I'm going to say Ezekiel Elliott. And the issue, I think he's actually going to get more work and he's going to start to get his usage. But the problem is we're not getting the targets that we got last year. Last year, he was averaging about 6 a game, and this year it's down to 3. And I think that's more so of how Kellen Moore is calling the offense than Elliott just not playing enough snaps. So at 9K, I want at least 25 points out of him. And going against New Orleans, he could hit it, but it's just not something I'm going to count on for that price tag. So I'm not going to play Elliott this week.
All right, so Zeke is a fade for you over $6,000. Jordan, what do you think here?
Oh, this one's a no-brainer for me. It's got to be Todd Gurley. Like I mentioned before, it's going to be all through the air, I think, on both sides of the ball. It's going to be a high-scoring game, hopefully, if Jameis isn't game managing the entire time and hopefully not throwing picks. We'll see. But, yeah, Todd Gurley hasn't been impressive at all. Tampa Bay has shut down McCaffrey. They, RIP Saquon Barkley. San Francisco's running backs didn't do anything. The front is very much improved. Todd Gurley, like I said, has been very unimpressive. There's no way he's touching my lineup, even if he was $6,000.
All right, so I can cross him off my list because I had a few players listed since I typically go last here. I also had Todd Gurley. He's priced at running back $7,000. I don't think he returns anything close to what you're going to need. So I actually agree with that. Dan, on to you. What do you think?
Unlike past weeks, I'm going to go a little bit further down the list, but still over the threshold. At $6,600, I'm going to return to the Adam Thielen funeral and tell all their owners to sit him. At that range, I mean, again, he's playing a tough Bears matchup. The team's only projected to score 18 points. How much is Thielen going to do? But you have options at receiver like Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Robert Woods. If you're looking at your flex and you want a running back, you have Ingram, Chubb, Derrick Henry, all in that range. So listeners, stay as far away from Adam Thielen as you can this weekend in DFS.
Yeah, and that makes sense with the way the show went earlier tonight. I think some people might have seen that coming as somebody that we're avoiding, and I agree with that, obviously, from the question earlier tonight. Now, Mitch always gets on me because I tend to have a take on just about every single player in the NFL. And yeah, it's true. But I had a long list of players for over 6,000 fades, under 6,000 plays, under 4,000 plays. I'm going to rattle off 3 here for my over $6,000 fades. Tom Brady, and then it's going to go hand in hand. Julian Edelman as well. I have Julian Edelman in redraft leagues, dynasty leagues. I'm still going to play him, but to return on that $6,500 price tag, wide receiver 9 in terms of price against that Buffalo defense, I do have a little bit of a concern there. And then obviously, Tom Brady going hand in hand at $6,600, quarterback 3 in terms of price. Those are 2 guys that I'm not willing to pay for. And then Chubb, they're playing that Baltimore defense. They have locked down running backs on the ground, and I think we're going to see that Baker Mayfield forced to throw the ball down the field. $6,400, Nick Chubb, not somebody that I'm looking to invest in this week on DraftKings. All right, Jordan, under $6,000, who's a guy that you like this week?
I'm going to stay in the Flames, man. I'm just going to preface it by saying that Denver D has been really bad. And I know you know what I'm about to say. It's probably going to make you sick because I'm about to go with a Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver. DJ Chark, baby. Let's go. Gardner Minshew is aggressive. He is accurate. DJ Chark is fast, and he used his red shirt year very well. I love DJ Chark. I love Gardner Minshew. I love what they're doing. Leonard Fournette has been very bad. You saw my tweet. I thought it was a pretty good tweet where it had the video of Saquon Barkley, just crutching off the field. I said, still more agile than Leonard Fournette, baby. I love what Gardner Minshew's doing. It could be a fluke. Who knows? Could be a flash in the pan type of thing. But like I said, Denver D has been bad. DJ Chark is talented. Gardner Minshew is aggressive and accurate. I'm going to stay in the Flames.
Mitch, who do you like here?
I'm happy. I get to go with Carry On. I haven't been able to talk about him yet, but this is the Carry On week. This
You've
is
been saying it's a smash game right here.
This is his explosion week, man. The Lions are coming in. Their O-line has looked pretty good so far, but they've had a couple of tough matchups with the Chargers and the Eagles. But now they get Kansas City, who has the worst rushing DVOA in the league. It's going to be a high-scoring game. Carry-On's going to get one rushing. He's going to get one passing. He's going to put up 30 points at his 5.4K price, and he's just a smash in every single lineup. And I don't think he's going to be highly owned either.
Not with what we've seen so far. And Dan, you can attest to the running back matchup against Kansas City, right?
Yeah, I think that's a smash spot, and I'm happy Mitch brought that up because I need some extra value in my lineup this week at 5,400. I like that, Mitch. And the Lions fan knows his team best, so I'm sure he's onto something there.
Mitch, very cynical when it comes to Lions. So the fact that he's putting Kerryon Johnson in his lineup, that's a very good sign. Dan, under $6,000, who do you like?
It's a fun one this weekend. You guys have some great picks. I'm with Jordan all the way on the DJ Shark train. I've been there since the preseason. Mitch could attest to that. Traded for him in every dynasty league, except for the only person that wouldn't trade me, ironically, is Mitch's brother in another league, no matter what I offered him. But the only reason I didn't go with Shark is there's a guy that's just rising up the ranks and is even cheaper, and that's Terry McLaurin. $4,500. What saving? I think it's a smash spot in cash lineups. I mean, he's averaging 20 points per game. He played well versus the Chicago Bears, and now he gets the New York Giants that have just no defense. Everybody's smoking their secondary. And, the Giants' pace of play is picking up a little bit with Danny Dimes now. So I think Terry is in a great spot, and at $4,500, it's the only reason I'll go him over Shark to save an extra $600.
How is Terry McLaurin only $4,500? He is the clear-cut number one receiver in that offense. Case Keenum's gonna throw the ball. What is this pricing? Terry McLaurin is an absolute stud. I'm not going to say legit, but he is an absolute stud.
It's the Monday night thing. It's the same problem that we had with the Raiders week 2 is the pricing comes out Sunday night for these games. And Monday night, McLaurin comes out and has another huge game and scores 19 points, and DraftKings can adjust after that for it.
And I think that was 3 games in a row now. He hit at least 17 fantasy points. And against this Giants defense, listeners, before the show, I told these guys, I said, we have to do a prop bet because 2 of the guys on the show here, they like the word legit. And I said, we're going to set the line at 3.5. So not counting the time I just said it, I think it's going to hit the under tonight. But Terry McLaurin, I have to cross him off my list. I had him on there as well. And again, I have a few names out there. I love that Giants-Redskins game. I absolutely love it. Depending on where you are with the rest of the lineup, if you need the $400 in savings, I actually like Case Keenum in what it's probably going to be his second to last start. So they have the Patriots the week after. That's probably going to be his last game. And I do think Dwayne Haskins steps in against Miami the week after. But Case Keenum, I think he's going to have a very productive game from a fantasy regard. Even though he struggled at times the last 3 weeks, he's been okay, again, looking at it from a fantasy lens. But if you're okay spending the extra $400, give me Daniel Jones. I also love Sterling Shepard. I like Terry McLaurin from that game. Evan Ingram. Hell, I might just put everybody from the Giants and Redskins in one lineup. Sorry to the listeners and to you guys, but I had, quite a few names here. Luckily for the $4,000 guys, my list is not as long. And I know you guys said you had a little trouble with this. So if you guys had trouble with it, these are going to be very valuable picks if you're trying to get great value. So Dan, under $4,000, who's a guy that you want our listeners to know about this week?
All right, I spent some extra time on this today because I feel bad I let the listeners down last week with the James Washington pick and one of our very rare misses. The process was there last week, but John, I don't know what's going on with your Steelers offensive coordinator and the game planning and Mason Rudolph thinking and dunking. And so that situation in Pittsburgh is just a mess, and I'm not going to argue about it anymore with
I've been saying it for weeks.
I should have listened to you. I should have listened to you there. Like I said, we all know our team's best. So like Mitch has carry on, your Steelers. I'm not going back to that well. But pick this week, I'm going to give 2. I'm going to be like John here. I'm going to give an extra pick. Not giving the entire lineup like John is, but I'm going to give you 2. My main pick, there's just a little asterisk next to it, but my main pick is Preston Williams at home versus the Chargers. Sorry, my friend.
Damn it, Dan. I need to go find one now.
At $3,900, I watched them play versus my Cowboys, and he just looks legit. Rosen, who flashed a little bit in that game, he says Williams is his BFF, man. Those guys are close. So he made plays versus Dallas. He's the Dolphins' clear number 1 receiver. He's going to get volume at $3,900. But here's the asterisk. Could be a chalky pick as well, just like I think McLaurin's going to be a chalky pick under 6K. The Chargers may use Casey Hayward if they're smart and shadow Preston Williams. So a good contrarian pick to get off of Williams and or McLaurin might be going back to that Giants game that you're excited about, Bauer, and taking Paul Richardson at $3,700, saving a ton of money. Nobody will be on him. He also looked decent last week versus a good defense. I'm expecting a sneaky high score there in that Giants game. Give me Paul Richardson if you want to shy away from Preston Williams.
Dan, if you steal my notes one more time, I'm going to have a real issue with you. So we can skip me this week on the under 4,000 because I also had Preston Williams and Paul Richardson. Those are 2 guys that really jumped off the page when I was going through. So yeah, Dan, fantastic picks there, especially in my opinion, obviously. So while we give Mitch a few seconds here to find something, Jordan, who do you have under $4,000?
I'm actually going to go back to a couple of the wells you guys have already discussed tonight. Should be high-scoring games. The first one's going to be Danny Amendola against the Chiefs. We've seen Amendola in a one high-target volume role this year. He put up a decent amount of points, touchdown. His ceiling isn't necessarily that great, but at 3,900, times 3 is 12 points or so. I think he could easily get up in the 16 range. But then another one, going back to the Giants-Redskins game, he just played his first game of the year, first game of his career, actually. He's at $3,200. He had 5 targets in his first career game. It's Darius Slayton at $3,200. He got some high praise in the preseason. He got banged up a little bit, but I think he has an opportunity to gain a role in the passing offense. Behind Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard at this point, there's no Saquon Barkley. Golden Tate's still suspended. So Slayton can easily earn himself a role this week as a number 3 receiver once Golden Tate returns.
I like that one too. I think that's somebody that's not going to be on a lot of people's radar. And Dan, while we talk about Terry McLaurin and Preston Williams and guys that most likely it's going to be a little chalky and they're going to be in a lot of lineups in these GPPs, in the tournaments, Slayton's a really smart pick here if you're looking to go a little contrarian and really budget your money elsewhere. And like I said, I want every piece of that game. Maybe I have my Daniel Jones colored glasses on here. He looked great last week, and I think it's going to continue. I forget the exact stats, but under pressure, he was, it was like 80% completion percentage. He looked great even when that line crumbled. He's mobile, obviously a lot more mobile than Eli Manning, but I think that this game, it has the possibility to be 30-27. I think it's going to be a really high scoring game, so I want every piece of that as well. Mitch, do you have anybody yet here?
I sure do, and I was actually going to play this guy last week, and he came up with a hamstring injury, so if he's out, I have another one right behind him. But in that Arizona game, we know that they pass a lot, and I think this passing game is going to break out a little bit. And so right now, Damari Bird is playing about 97% of the snaps, and he played that much last week as well, even though he has a hamstring injury this week. And at 3,300, he's gotten 7 targets twice already. And I think they're going to be behind a little bit in the Seattle game. So give me Damari Bird. And if he is out, I think Keyshawn Johnson becomes a smash play at that point because he's going to have to be in on those 97% of snaps. And he's only 3,200. And he already has a week 1 where he had 10 targets against Detroit. So I think either of those guys, if you're really hurting for 32 and 3,400, I think they're pretty good plays.
And we've talked about the pace of play in Arizona how many times now, and it's just, shoved down people's throats, but it's a real thing. And I'm actually surprised at how quickly they've been playing and how many snaps that we've seen game in and game out. Again, only 3 games in, but we've still seen it. And if you're looking for value, especially if Bird can't go because of the hamstring injury, there's going to be targets to go around. And I think those are great picks there, Mitch. Before we sign off, guys, what are your closing thoughts here for the listeners? Dan, before we head into week 4, what do you need the listeners to know?
2 things. One, before my actual closing thought, we all gave those little sneaky PPR, guys under 4K. Mitch mentioned, keep an eye on Bird's hamstring. Same thing with Amendola, another sneaky pick, and versus the Chiefs. I think he has a chest injury and did not practice today, so you want to monitor both of those guys. But what I would give to the listeners is just a going away note, like we do every week. Listen to our processes. Listen to a lot of our comments when you listen to this podcast for our listeners, not just our picks ourselves. We do a lot of studying, but out of the 4 of us and the industry experts, none of us are in the locker room during the week, so we don't quite have everything. I think it's really important to learn the processes and listen to those few tips we get along the way. And I think it's just a little bit of helpful advice. I'll do that during the week. Listen to, say, like Adam Schefter, and he'll have like some odd guess that has nothing to do with fantasy football, but he'll share some tip related to fantasy football, and it helps us make educated decisions. So hopefully our listeners gain a lot from what we're sharing.
Absolutely. And I think just having available resources, I know for me personally, you look at your phone and you can see the usage and where your battery's being used. And I'm ashamed to say how often I am on Twitter, but I'm constantly scrolling, and having those resources that are literally at our fingertips, so easily accessible. So Dan, that's a great point, paying attention throughout the week, but keeping your ears open and your eyes open in those situations, but getting that information because it is going to help you tremendously. So like you said, not just listening to our picks, but the things that we're talking about leading up to those picks, probably more valuable than the pick itself. Mitch, what's your closing thought here for the listeners?
So I'm going to hit on, this works in both Dynasty and Redraft, but right now I'm sure everyone's seeing trade activities picked up here week 3. And it's going to be even more week 4. But when you go into trade, go and look at all the rosters and see where people are hurting, because that's how you're going to get trades done. Just because you want to, say you like Larry Fitzgerald's rest of season schedule, right? You go on there and you just try to get him from that owner, and maybe that owner only has 3 decent wide receivers, and there's just no way he's going to trade you Fitzgerald for Fitzgerald's price. But go in there and don't look for specific players, but look at where teams are hurting and where you're stacked. Like, for instance, this week in a tight end premium league, I was able to trade Zach Ertz and I got Michael Thomas back. And everyone in the league chat kind of, said something about it.
There was commentary. There was,
but at the time, Zach Ertz is huge in that league because it's 2 points per reception for the tight end. And the owner that I traded him to didn't have anybody to even start. So that's why I put that offer out there. And there wasn't negotiation or anything. It was just accepted 10 minutes later. When you're wanting to trade, go through the rosters more so than look for the individual players themselves.
Completely agree. And I think that's a fantastic point. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure it's happened to all 3 of you as well, where you'll get a cold offer and hell, maybe the value's okay, but we're mid-season here and we need startable assets. And if it's a start 3 wide receiver league and now that knocks you down to 2 receivers, you might not be able to pull the trigger. So I think that's a fantastic point for our listeners here, Mitch. And Jordan, last up here, closing notes heading into week 4. What do you have for our listeners?
I've got a few things. If you're not already invested into the Seahawks passing offense, do so. Chris Carson's been weak.
Be careful. Tread carefully there. Chris Carson.
Easy, Jordan. Easy.
He's been weak in terms of holding onto the football, and we all know the injury history. Rashad Penny has also been banged up. Russell Wilson is a great quarterback. Tyler Lockett, you won't find a bigger fan. Trust it. DK Metcalf's going to be good. I hate to say it. He's going to be good. Also, single QB leagues, don't be afraid to play 2 tight ends at this point. We are actually seeing a decent amount, by decent, I mean a great amount of tight end production. I don't know about you guys, but I have leagues where I have a top 5 tight end, and then I also have Darren Waller because he was free this offseason. So, don't be afraid to play two tight ends. Because I have Evan Ingram, he's number 1 tight end right now. I have Darren Waller, he's the number 3 tight end right now. Play 2 tight ends. It's working out right now. It's not like it used to be. But that's about all I got. Just, stay in the flames with DJ Chark, stay in the flames with Tyler Lockett, and just, let's do this thing.
I actually like the 2 tight end set, and there's one dynasty league. It's a 14-team league, and I don't know how, but I'm 2-1 to start the season. I don't want to brag, but I did win the championship last year. But of course, I'm going to throw that tidbit in. And I'm actually starting for the 4th week in a row 3 tight ends, and it's super flex, so I have the 2 quarterbacks in. But I'm starting Hooper, Kelsey, and then I hope he shows up this week, OJ Howard. But yeah, there is a lot of production at the top of the tight end charts this year. And I had a tweet talking about if you went tight end early in redraft, you're probably not liking the outcome so far. And some people had pushback, but because we're seeing Austin Hooper, Disley, Darren Waller, there's a lot of options that were either really cheap or free. Greg Olsen, he was picked up off the waiver wire. So yeah, tight ends, it's a great year for tight ends. So I think that's a great tidbit there for our listeners too. Hopefully the DFS advice, you're getting something from this. Yeah, we're going to miss some once in a while, but we're putting our best foot forward. We're trying to give the best advice possible. The start sit takes, I don't want to brag, but for the team, our majority results over the last 2 weeks, 7, 3, and 1. Not too shabby at all. But as always, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Super Flexology Start Sit series. Best of luck in week 4. Have a great night.